A police source says authorities took at least one man into custody after they found drugs in the apartment building at 780 Garden Street in the Belmont section of the Bronx, which also houses multiple
30 federal prosecutors and the FBI say they've shut down what they're calling an open-air drug market at a NYCHA complex in Harlem. 12 people were taken into custody. Investigators say the group ran its operation for years.
You can see the gates of this smoke shop down. Investigators say what was happening inside there was a pretty wild setup. They say it's connected to an apartment above here by a secret chute used to move illegal products without anyone noticing.
Down a sophisticated drug trafficking operation across from a school.
Yeah, police say it was so large it had the potential of supplying drug networks throughout the entire Northeast.
Drug bust in a Bronx apartment. Police recovered more than 26 pounds of and $3 million.
CBS News New York exclusive. A rainbow variety of deadly pills and trap doors to keep the stash a secret. It was all part of a multi-million-dollar drug bust that went down inside a Manhattan residential building, and neighbors say they had no idea.
Down of a massive drug ring. It involved 3 interconnected groups responsible for sourcing and selling across 7 counties.
And we are charging 48 people for their roles in operating this ring.
Several men were arrested following a year-and-a-half-long investigation resulting in numerous drug and gun seizures in Brooklyn, Queens, and Nassau County.
Connected to Washington Square Park.
Federal prosecutors have filed charges against 19 people, accusing them of running an open-air drug market.
All right, Fox 5.
New York's drug trade doesn't operate like a street hustle anymore. It operates like a supply chain. What looks normal on the surface can be a cover story. A tractor trailer that appears to be delivering papayas turns into one of the city's biggest meth seizures. A luxury high-rise in Hell's Kitchen becomes a stash point for bulk narcotics. And a Bronx investigation turns urgent when authorities say fentanyl is being stored in a building that also houses daycares. From hidden compartments in furniture to secret chutes in smoke shops, from pill press operations to park-based open-air markets that allegedly run all day, every day. The pattern is the same. These networks adapt, camouflage, and expand. And the map is bigger than the 5 boroughs. Federal and local task forces describe pipelines that stretch from the West Coast into NYC, then out toward Long Island and Upstate. While other cases focus on hotspots like Washington Square Park, East Harlem, and Rufus King Park, places investigators say were treated like territory, managed in teams, and protected with warnings and counter-surveillance. This video pulls those cases together into one story. Not just who got arrested, but how the shipments move, where the markets operate, and why the methods keep getting more sophisticated.
A major drug bust connected to Washington Square Park.
Federal prosecutors have filed charges against 19 people, accusing them of running an open-air drug market.
Right.
Well, Stephen, Natasha, 19 suspected heroin and fentanyl dealers from 2 different alleged criminal organizations have been arrested for deadly drugs they sold in and around Washington Square Park. The feds say the indictments are an attempt to hold drug dealers responsible for the overdose deaths they caused. One of the victims, the feds say, was the grandson of famous Hollywood actor Robert De Niro. Now, feds say the 2 criminal organizations, one a subset of the Bloods gang and the other run by a man who allegedly had been selling drugs in Washington Square Park for 25 years. The defendants have...
Federal authorities in Manhattan unsealed charges against 19 people they say were running around the clock, open-air drug market in and around Washington Square Park, Greenwich Village, since at least 2020. The DEA and NYPD said the group allegedly sold opioids and other drugs operating all day, every day, and coordinating in overlapping teams to maintain control of the area. Prosecutors allege the conspiracy was tied to at least 2 fatal overdoses in 2024. An 18-year-old, described as a recent high school graduate who came to NYC for a prestigious internship, and a 43-year-old unhoused man who frequently bought drugs in the area. Officials also said first responders and NYPD medical personnel have answered 65 plus apparent overdose calls in the Washington Square Park area over recent years, one of the reasons they framed the park as an epicenter in the city's overdose crisis. The DE press release names Malik Lug, Aka, Scarface, as part of a Macballer subset of the Bloods and identifies John Levigny, Aka Johnny as another central figure, with news coverage describing two main teams, a Bloods-linked group and a Levigny-led group that allegedly coordinated territory and warned each other about police presence. Authorities said at least 14 defendants were arrested immediately around the unsealing.
Federal prosecutors and the FBI say they've shut down what they're calling an open-air drug market at a NYCHA complex in Harlem. 12 people were taken into custody. Investigators say the group ran its operation for years out of the Johnson houses, just a few blocks from Central Park. They say deals happened in the lobby and other public areas of the building, while empty apartments were used to store drugs and guns.
Federal prosecutors, the FBI, and NYPD say an indictment charges 12 people with running a drug trafficking conspiracy from at least 2022 through 2025. Using a building and its courtyard at the Johnson houses as an open-air market where customers allegedly came into the building to buy drugs. Prosecutors say the group allegedly worked out of lobbies, courtyards, stairwells, and even a children's playground, using stash apartments and utility boxes in stairwells to store drugs, paraphernalia, and guns. The DOJ release says 8 defendants were arrested. During the coordinated arrest searches, prosecutors said agents recovered firearms and narcotics, including 5 guns, 2 long guns, from a stash apartment, plus additional firearms ammunition from other locations and suspected narcotics and packaging mixing materials.
Drug bust in a Bronx apartment. Police recovered more than 26 pounds of and $3 million. Investigators say they arrested a major narcotics distributor in the Norwood section. They say he concealed the drugs and cash inside furniture. Got to be big furniture with hidden trap compartments. The 60-year-old suspect faces numerous drug charges.
On March 22, 2024, New York officials announced a major Bronx narcotics case after a 2-month investigation led to the seizure of about 12 kilograms of Coca-Cola and over $3 million in cash from an apartment in the Norwood section of the Bronx. Prosecutors said the money and drugs weren't sitting out in the open. They were packed into hidden trap compartments built into furniture, including dressers, nightstands, and a coffee table. Authorities said the defendant, Juan Rondon, was arrested on March 20, 2024 after investigators watched him enter and exit 3,405 Gates Place carrying a bag, then return again. They stopped him in the building lobby and alleged he had a quantity of cocaine and keys to apartment 2A. With a court-authorized search and help from a New York State Police K-9 unit, they said they found bundled cash labeled with dates spanning several years, at least 10 luxury watches, including Rolex and Cartier, and that the coffee table held approximately 12 kilograms of Coca-Cola along with some of the cash. Officials noted the apartment appeared nondescript, with no obvious fortified locks or security setup, despite the scale of what was inside.
Yeah, that's right. You can see the gates of this smoke shop down. Investigators say what was happening inside there was a pretty wild setup. They say it's connected to an apartment above here by a secret chute used to move illegal products without anyone noticing. This citizen video shows the scene Thursday. The sheriff, task force, Homeland Security, and NYPD taped off the sidewalk in front of the shop. K-9 units were out here as well as they executed 2 search warrants at the same time. Officials say this was all part of an ongoing investigation into illegal cannabis sales and deceptive practices at the shop and the apartment above it. The sheriff's office also releasing these photos of some of what they recovered. You can see brightly packaged edibles, vapes, some cannabis flowers, and THC concentrates. In total, they say they seized more than 1,000 pounds of products worth about $1.7 million, along with $20,000 in cash.
On November 13, 2025, NYC Sheriff Joint Compliance Task Force, alongside Homeland Security investigations, executed search warrants in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn after investigators said a smoke shop was using a hidden connective chute, a concealed opening between the store and an upstairs apartment, to move and stash illegal cannabis products out of sight. Authorities said the warrants hit both the smoke shop and a second-story apartment used as storage, and the secret chute setup was the key feature that made this raid stand out in the city's broader crackdown. Officials reported seizing about 1,096.6 pounds of illicit cannabis and related products estimated at $1.7 million plus $20,320 in cash. The sheriff's office itemized the haul as including large quantities of cannabis flower, THC concentrate, THC edibles, THC vapes, and untaxed cigarettes. 3 people were arrested and charged with criminal trespass, criminal possession of cannabis, and criminal possession of a controlled substance, while FDNY Fire Prevention and the Department of Buildings issued violations and a partial vacate order tied to conditions found during the operation. This raid was also framed as part of Operation Padlock to protect NYC's ongoing effort to seal unlicensed smoke shops. City and media reporting has described hundreds to well over 1,000 shops being sealed since the initiative launched.
A police source says authorities took at least one man into custody after they found drugs in the apartment building at 780 Garden Street in the Belmont section of the Bronx, which also houses multiple daycare centers. Charges against the man are pending. According to the fire department, authorities initially responded to a report of a fentanyl spill. We saw first responders wearing hazmat suits. Police found 12 kilograms, or nearly 26.5 pounds of in an apartment in the building, according to News 12. Exposure to even a minuscule amount can be deadly.
On December 10 to 11, 2024, a Fendi investigation in the Belmont section of the Bronx turned urgent because the stash was allegedly stored inside 780 Garden Street, a residential building that also housed 2 daycare centers. Investigators said they recovered over 12 kilograms of suspected Fendi, more than 26 pounds, in total, with at least 7 kilograms coming from a first-floor apartment, and that children in a daycare down the hall were evacuated as a precaution during the search. Prosecutors said ZX Cruz was arrested and arraigned in Manhattan criminal court, where a judge ordered him remanded. The complaint alleged a 2-month undercover investigation in which Cruz made multiple large Fendi sales to an undercover officer. A sale of about 225 grams for $4,000, a sale of about 1 kilogram for $18,000, and a sale of 4 kilograms for $72,000, after which he was arrested. During the apartment search, officials said Fendi powder was disturbed and released into the air, triggering a safety response. The first floor was evacuated, the daycare was alerted, and FDNY EMS and hazmat responded while officers were evaluated for possible exposure. Prosecutors charged Cruz with operating as a major trafficker, criminal sale of a controlled substance in the first degree, and criminal possession of a controlled substance in the first degree, plus additional possession counts.
We believe that these drugs that ended up here in Long Island are coming from the Mexican cartels.
Plus, at the home of Miguel Torres in Wyandanch, at least 3 kilos of suspected fentanyl. Torres found sleeping in his bedroom with a loaded handgun. Investigators tracking the drugs from the Bronx to the suspects in western Suffolk allegedly dealing from Bayshore, Lindenhurst, West Islip, and Wyandanch. But the drug trade reached all the way out to the East End.
Police and prosecutors say the case was built by Suffolk's East End Drug Task Force working with the New York Drug Enforcement Task Force, NYPD, the city's special narcotics prosecutor, and a U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force, targeting a supply chain they said ran from the Bronx into Suffolk County. According to the DA's press release, investigators focused on John Collado, Luigi Peralta, Anthony Dominguez, Jurgenis Paulino, David Priest, and Michael Torres, alleging they conspired to distribute Fendi and Coca-Cola in Suffolk County. Prosecutors say a key part of the investigation involved undercover buys. They allege 13 sales to undercover officers, totaling 7,441 Fendi pills made to look like Oxy M30 pills and 2.8 kilograms of Coca-Cola, with an estimated street value over $245,000 for the purchased drugs. The DA says the investigation was conducted between April 2025 and October 2025.
At first glance, this is what DEA agents saw when they stopped a tractor-trailer in Brooklyn. Boxes and boxes full of papayas. But they say that's not the only thing the semi was carrying.
How much is all of this worth?
So this is, in totality, approximately $1 million.
Special agent in charge of the DEA's New York division says the smugglers sawed these holes in the wooden pallet. Agents say they've traced the drugs from where they were discovered in Brooklyn all the way down to Mexico, where the Sinaloa drug cartel operates. the same one formerly run by the now infamous Joaquin El Chapo Guzman,
which is one of the two most dominant cartels.
In Brooklyn in early December 2025, DEA agents said they made one of the biggest drug seizures New York City has seen in recent history, after stopping and searching a tractor-trailer that looked like a papaya delivery. When agents opened it, they found the load wasn't just produce. Officials said the drugs were hidden inside modified wooden pallets beneath the boxes, a concealment method DEA leadership called unusually ingenious compared with what they'd been seeing lately. Authorities publicly described the haul as about 300 pounds of meth valued in the reporting at about $1 million, and said they traced the shipment's origins back toward Sinaloa, Mexico, pointing to cartel-linked supply lines feeding the Northeast. Investigators also said loaded firearms were recovered in connection with the seizure. The driver was arrested and, according to the report, is facing federal narcotics and weapons charges. While agents believe the shipment was intended for distribution across the wider tri-state Northeast
Taken down
market.
a sophisticated drug trafficking operation across from a school.
Yeah, police say it was so large it had the potential of supplying drug networks throughout the entire Northeast.
Here in the Soundview section of the Bronx, where authorities say this man, Guandancio Perez, was the mastermind behind a sophisticated drug operation inside this pizzeria. Had you ever been in there for food?
Yeah, I got me a couple of slices out of there.
The small, now shuttered business is at 553 Soundview Avenue. 42 kilos. Workers allegedly stored that near the counter for easy sales and samples for customers. All of this right next to a community center and across the street from an elementary school, PS 69. Perez allegedly ran the operation inside Mozzarella Pizza with his wife Zulima and this man from Connecticut, Alexander Samboy. Police maintained Thursday morning they spotted the couple transferring a large bag from a car and into the pizzeria. Samboy shows up and leaves in a car with a backpack.
This is New York, baby. Anything possible, but it's sad by the school, but anything is possible.
A Bronx pizzeria in Soundview Mozzarella Pizza on Soundview Avenue, across from PS 69, became the center of a major narcotics case after investigators said it was being used as a stash and distribution spot, not just a restaurant. Authorities announced the bust, saying they recovered 100+ pounds of suspected narcotics with an estimated street value around $4 million, including large quantities of suspected Coca-Cola plus other drugs, along with cash and equipment used to package drugs. Investigators described a surveillance-driven takedown. They said they watched Gaudencio Rosendo Perez, Zulema Cardenas Espinoza, and Alexander Samboy moving items in and out of the pizzeria, then stopped Samboy's vehicle and allegedly recovered 5 kilograms of suspected Coca-Cola. After that, authorities executed search warrants at the pizzeria and said they found about 42 kilograms of suspected Coca-Cola in the basement, approximately 1 kilogram of other drugs, around 1,000 glassine envelopes containing suspected drugs and a kilo press, additional suspected packaging, and about $40,000 in cash.
After the takedown of a massive drug ring, it involved 3 interconnected groups responsible for sourcing and selling across 7 counties. The investigation first began nearly 3 years ago, centered around Michael Danzy and his brother, Terrence Rags. From there, authorities say they traced this drug peddling web to a second operation involving resellers who lived on a small section of Avenue D in Rochester.
They all lived within a few yards of each other, making Avenue D a major drug hub.
On June 13, 2023, New York Attorney General Letitia James announced a major narcotics takedown across the Rochester Finger Lakes region, saying investigators had arrested 48 people and filed 177 charges tied to a trafficking network operating in Monroe, Wayne, Cayuga, Ontario, Orleans, Seneca, and Yates counties. According to the Attorney General's Organized Crime Task Force, the case began in Wayne County and expanded as investigators identified what they described as 3 interconnected groups moving large quantities of drugs through the region, including a Wayne County-centered supply stream and a Rochester distribution hub. Officials said the investigation relied on extensive surveillance and wiretaps and resulted in the seizure of more than 10 kilograms of Fendi, more than 10 kilograms of Coca-Cola, additional narcotics, over $440,000 in cash, and 19 firearms, including ghost guns, with authorities valuing the overall haul at more than $9 million. In a later update, the Attorney General's office reported that by September 2025, 47 people connected to the broader investigation had been convicted and sentenced, with penalties ranging from probation to lengthy prison terms, including a 25-year sentence for Michael Danzy.
A major crackdown on what authorities describe as a $1 million drug and gun trafficking ring. Several men were arrested following a year-and-a-half-long investigation resulting in numerous drug and gun seizures in Brooklyn, Queens, and Nassau County. The arrests stem from long-standing violence and drug sales in and around Rufus King Park in Jamaica. Officials say the accused leader of this drug and gun ring, identified as Adrian Escobar,
This Queens $1 million drug plus gun trafficking ring case was announced June 13, 2023 by the Queens DA and NYPD, centered on alleged violence and open-air drug sales around Rufus King Park in Jamaica, 103rd Precinct area. Prosecutors said a year-and-a-half investigation used wiretaps, plus dozens of undercover buys, including about 40 drug purchases and 5 handgun buys from at least one defendant before search warrants and arrests. According to the Queens DA's press release, 8 men were charged: Adrian Escobar, King Mango, Junior Escobar, Jose Escobar, Juan Escobar, Manuel Gomez, Jonathan Fernandez, Joseph Fernandez, and Jonathan Suarez. The DA said 3 defendants were charged as major traffickers, and the indictments included a mix of high-level narcotics counts, conspiracy counts, and firearms-related charges.
This bust was 3 years in the making, and officials say was carried out in 3 Washington Heights apartments on Wadsworth and Audubon Avenues. The DEA says trap doors were built into the apartment walls to conceal the stash, nestled between unsuspecting neighbors. There, agents also seized an industrial-scale pill press machine,
pressing hundreds of thousands of pills for distribution throughout the New York City area, but throughout the Northeast.
The DEA's New York division announced what it described as a multi-million-dollar drug bust tied to an alleged operation producing counterfeit pills in Manhattan's Washington Heights. According to officials quoted in the CBS report, agents seized more than 40 pounds of meth, along with Coca-Cola and Fentanyl, which the DEA said were being used as ingredients to manufacture pills that were advertised online as MDMA. Special Agent in charge Frank Tarantino said the powders recovered were enough to make roughly 120,000 fatal pills, and warned that what many people think of as MDMA has shifted in recent years. He said the product they're seeing can be meth laced with Fentanyl. The report also says the pills were designed to appeal to younger buyers, including tablets described as resembling marshmallow shapes like those in Lucky Charms. Investigators said the stash was hidden inside a crowded apartment building near Wadsworth Avenue and Audubon Avenue, where drugs were allegedly stored behind trapdoors built into the walls of 3 apartments. Agents also seized an industrial-scale pill press machine, which officials said could be used to press hundreds of thousands of pills for distribution across NYC and the Northeast. The DEA said the investigation was 3 years in the making.
Investigators in New York State execute a massive drug bust, seizing 11 kilos. The drug bust happened in a neighborhood in Ardsley, north of New York City. The Drug Enforcement Agency executed a search warrant on that home on Friday. That's when they found all of those drugs. Neighbors say they would see a lot of cars coming and going at that house, but no one had any idea they were living next to a drug den.
I think they came into a quiet neighborhood and just figured this might be a safe place for them, but I guess not. Shocking. It's shocking and kind of scary and awful all at the same time.
At this point, 5 people have been arrested. Neighbors say 3 of them lived in that
In
home.
early March 2019, federal and local agents raided a quiet residential home in Ardsley, Westchester County, that they described as a Fendi and H mill, a processing and packaging location rather than a street corner deal. Authorities said they seized 5 kilograms of Fenty and 6 kilograms of H, and a DEA official emphasized the Fendi alone was potent enough to be lethal at a massive scale. Investigators said the search turned up more than just bulk drugs. Reporting described cutting agents, grinders, baggies, and other packaging materials, plus furniture with hidden compartments used to conceal powdered substances. Authorities announced 5 arrests: Braulio Mata, Jose Garcia, Ramon Aracena Alf, Dianel Duarte Hernandez, and Yarly Mendoza de Lorbe. Follow-up reporting said the charges varied by defendant. Several were described as facing conspiracy and possession charges, while others faced possession, and one was also reported as charged with resisting arrest.
38-year-old Michael Harper of Corning and 28-year-old Anthony Medina of Painted Post are charged with conspiracy to distribute and possess with intent to distribute controlled substances. According to federal prosecutors, both Harper and Medina got shipments of kilos of that they then distributed across western and central New York through contacts in Rochester and Syracuse. Authorities say the men used programs like Signal to send pictures and negotiate drug deals.
Federal and New York State authorities were talking about an 18-month investigation into a New York City-based drug trafficking organization that prosecutors said moved bulk drugs from the West, including California, to NYC, then out to upstate New York. The enforcement phase hit on June 12, 2025, when agents executed 24 searches across New York and New Jersey, made arrests, including in Georgia and Pennsylvania, and seized almost 250 kilograms of Coca-Cola, Fendi pills, other drugs paraphernalia, a firearm, and more than $1 million in cash. Officials said that was on top of earlier seizures during the same probe, totaling 240-plus kilos of Coca-Cola, 185 pounds of meth, and almost 700 pounds of Mary, which is why some outlets summarized it as one of the biggest NYC-linked drug rings in decades. What made this case stand out wasn't just the weight, it was the alleged logistics pipeline. Court documents and reporting describe shipments moved cross-country using trucking warehouses and legit-looking freight loads. One major example described in reporting: law enforcement stopped a tractor-trailer in NYC and found 240 kilograms of Coca-Cola hidden inside chest freezers, plus 686 pounds of Mary in boxes. Investigators say they captured large volumes of text, encrypted chats, tracked stash locations, and followed how bulk loads were broken down into smaller deliveries to upstate dealers. In late March 2017, the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office announced a sweeping takedown of what prosecutors described as a Brooklyn-based drug distribution network that allegedly moved Dryax. The DA said a 357-count indictment charged 34 people, accusing them of operating a structured ring that sold narcotics across New York City, reached into some upstate New York counties, and connected to Phoenix, Arizona, during the period June 2016 through March 2017. Prosecutors laid out what they said was a clear hierarchy. Jerome Horton allegedly ran the Brooklyn distribution side, with Willie Billingsley directly beneath him, and a layer of redistributors who bought and resold drugs in amounts ranging from 5 to 800 grams. On the supply end, the DA alleged that Nigel Maloney, based in Phoenix, mailed Agent Coca-Cola to Warren Apollon in Jamaica, Queens, who then supplied Billingsley for Horton's Brooklyn operation. When demand outpaced that pipeline, investigators said the group allegedly turned to secondary suppliers, naming Joseph Raffoni and Christian Cruz as sources for drugs received in bulk through the mail. On Wednesday, March 15, 2017, authorities said they carried out coordinated early morning raids in the Bronx that led to the arrest of about 40 people described in news coverage as suspected gang members, with charges that included drug trafficking, gun, and robbery offenses, and initial court appearances set for federal court in Lower Manhattan. Investigators said the alleged drug dealing involved Coca-Cola and was concentrated mainly in the Bronx, and prosecutors tied one alleged transaction to the December 11, 2016 demise of Jose Morales, also known as Benny White, near East 175th Street. According to the SDNY release, the East 175th and Monroe group involved 15 defendants, while the Weeks Avenue and East 176th each group involved 34 defendants. The indictments alleged conspiracies to distribute, plus firearms offenses. On March 12, 2024, members of the New York Drug Enforcement Task Force, Group T43, were conducting surveillance at 550 West 54th Street in advance of a court-authorized search of apartment 27F. Investigators said they watched Giovanni Salas leave the apartment, took him into custody in the lobby, and recovered a wallet containing identification for Sergio Betancourt Peralta plus a key that allegedly opened the apartment door. Agents entered and searched the apartment, arrested Peralta inside, and recovered roughly 30 pounds of meth and 4 kilograms of coca packed inside a suitcase in a bedroom closet. They also seized about $27,880 in cash from a backpack and reported recovering Peralta's Mexican passport and an expired Visa border crossing card, along with Salas's Mexican voter registration, Colorado driver's license, and U.S. passport. Authorities estimated the narcotics' value at over $1.1 million and said the case was handled with the NYC Office of the Special Narcotics Prosecutor, alongside the DEA, NYPD, and New York State Police. In court, both men initially faced New York felony charges of criminal possession of a controlled substance and were arraigned in Manhattan criminal court. Report states that both defendants ultimately pled guilty to criminal possession of a controlled substance in the third degree and were sentenced to 4 years in prison. And it adds that investigators also recovered 2 vacuum sealing machines along with the cash and drugs. When you line these cases up side by side, the headline isn't just the weight or the dollar figures, it's the evolution. Investigators keep pointing to concealment getting smarter, distribution getting wider, and street markets operating with more structure. Crews, resellers, stash locations, and supply lines that reach from outside New York right into neighborhood corridors. Whether it's a park-based marketplace, a public housing courtyard, a smoke shop with hidden access points, or a high-rise stash apartment, the same thing shows up again and again. The geography changes, but the playbook rhymes. And that's the real takeaway. New York's drug enforcement stories aren't isolated snapshots. They're pieces of a bigger map showing how trafficking adapts under pressure.